When historians talk about Iowa in 1856, they almost always focus on what was visible: the spread of settlements, the arrival of rail lines, the slow transformation of prairie into farmland. It's a story told from the surface, one that assumes everything meaningful happened in plain sight. But one of the most unsettling events in Iowa's history didn't happen above ground at all. It happened beneath it, and it passed through history so quietly that it barely left a trace. The discovery began without curiosity or intention. It started with an order. Workmen were instructed to excavate a cellar for a new building associated with Governor James W. Grimes at the corner of Main and Valley Streets. The task was ordinary by frontier standards: dig down, level the earth, prepare a foundation. Nothing about the job suggested it would expose anything more than soil and stone. But as the men dug deeper into the prairie ground, their tools struck something solid, not bedrock, not timber, something shaped, something constructed. As more earth was cleared away, an outline emerged that didn't belong in the Iowa frontier of 1856. Beneath layers of untouched soil sat an arched vault, roughly 10 feet square, buried at a depth that made no sense for any known settlement. This structure wasn't recorded in land surveys. It wasn't mentioned in territorial documents. No one living nearby claimed knowledge of it, yet it was there, intact, hidden beneath land believed to be unaltered since time immemorial. The local newspaper mentioned the find once, just once. The article described the vault almost casually, as though the writer didn't yet grasp its implications. But what lay inside forced even hardened frontier workers to pause. Inside the chamber were human skeletons, 8 of them. Not fragmentary remains, complete skeletons laid out deliberately. And they were enormous. The article described them as measuring between 8 and 10 feet in length, the largest human remains ever found according to the report. Not one unusually tall individual, but 8, buried together. The chamber itself appeared built specifically to accommodate bodies of that size. Then something strange happened. The story stopped. No follow-up articles appeared. No officials arrived to investigate. No scientific societies requested access. The discovery, which should have sparked intense interest, simply vanished from public discussion. Later explanations would attempt to smooth over the event: misidentification, exaggeration, frontier myth-making. But the original account didn't read like folklore. It read like a routine report of something that shouldn't have existed. And that quiet disappearance, the sudden lack of curiosity, is where the Iowa discovery stops looking accidental and starts raising far more uncomfortable questions. When the workers continued clearing the area around the vault, the inconsistencies multiplied. This wasn't a crude hole dug for burial. It was engineered architecture. The chamber's walls were measured at roughly 14 inches thick, laid with a cement-like mortar that the men described as nearly indestructible. It hadn't cracked under pressure. It hadn't degraded from moisture or frost. It had held firm beneath the weight of prairie soil for an unknown length of time. That detail alone was troubling. Iowa in 1856 did not have the materials, knowledge, or reason to construct something like this. Frontier buildings were temporary by necessity. Wood, not stone. Speed, not permanence. Yet this vault was designed to endure. The arched ceiling required careful planning and an understanding of load distribution. This wasn't the work of settlers improvising with limited tools. It suggested builders who understood engineering principles well enough to create structures meant to last centuries. As the men examined the interior, it became clear the chamber was not random in layout. The skeletons were arranged deliberately, not piled or scattered. Each was complete, articulated, and preserved in a state that suggested protection from decay. This was not a mass grave from disease or violence. It was a formal burial chamber. The size of the remains made that conclusion even harder to dismiss. 8 individuals, all measuring roughly the same extraordinary height. If this had been a case of giantism, the bones would have shown deformities, inconsistencies, abnormalities. But the report described normal human proportions, simply scaled far beyond expectation. A group of similarly sized individuals buried together implies a population, not a medical anomaly. At the time, no one used language like lost civilization or ancient giants, but among the workers there was a quiet recognition that something didn't add up. Whoever had been buried here had been treated with care, placed within a structure built specifically for their size, sealed inside architecture meant to protect them from time itself. And yet, despite the magnitude of the find, nothing followed. No detailed measurements were taken beyond what appeared in the paper. No drawings were preserved. No attempt was made to preserve the chamber or its contents. The vault was eventually filled back in as construction continued. Whatever became of the skeletons was never officially recorded. This silence is difficult to explain as simple oversight. Even by mid-19th century standards, discoveries of unusual remains often attracted attention from Eastern scientific societies. Specimens were shipped, catalogued, debated. But in this case, no such process occurred. The evidence didn't move forward into study. It disappeared. And this disappearance follows a pattern that becomes clearer the wider you look. Throughout the 1800s, newspapers across the Midwest reported similar finds: giant skeletons uncovered in burial mounds, sophisticated construction beneath farmland, artifacts suggesting complex cultures that didn't fit accepted timelines. And again the same thing happened. Brief attention, then silence. The Iowa Vault wasn't an isolated anomaly. It was part of a broader phenomenon that official history has never fully confronted. As the 19th century progressed, institutions began shaping a formal narrative of North American prehistory. Museums, universities, and government-backed scientific bodies worked to establish a coherent story. When humans arrived, how they lived, what they built, and what they were capable of. That narrative left little room for ambiguity, and it left no room at all for populations that didn't fit biological or cultural expectations. Within that framework, discoveries like the Iowa Vault became problems. Across Wisconsin, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania, local papers recorded similar events. Burial mounds opened during farming or construction revealed skeletons measuring 7, 8, even 9 feet in length. Some accounts described copper ornaments, stonework, and carefully arranged burials that suggested organized societies with skilled craftsmanship. In several cases, the remains were reportedly sent to Washington for examination. After that, they were never mentioned again. No public studies, no exhibits, no conclusions. The conventional explanation has always been the same: exaggeration, hoaxes, misidentified animal bones, mastodons mistaken for men. But that explanation requires believing something extraordinary in its own right. It requires believing that hundreds of witnesses across different states, decades apart, all made the same mistake. That newspapers consistently printed measurements, descriptions, and construction details without skepticism, and that every piece of physical evidence conveniently vanished before it could be verified. What actually happened looks less dramatic but far more effective. Evidence that challenged the accepted narrative wasn't destroyed in public view, it was quietly set aside, archived without emphasis, stored without display, labeled in ways that discouraged further attention. This wasn't active suppression, it was passive erasure. The Iowa discovery fits that pattern perfectly. The vault was filled in, the skeletons were removed or reburied, the site was built over, no marker was placed, no follow-up excavation was ever conducted. And as decades passed, the story became easier to dismiss simply because the evidence was no longer accessible. But when you strip away later explanations and return to the original account, certain facts remain stubbornly unresolved. The vault demonstrated sophisticated engineering. The arched ceiling required knowledge of force distribution. The 14-inch walls indicated experience with load-bearing construction. The mortar's durability suggested advanced material techniques. None of this aligns with what is typically attributed to pre-contact cultures in Iowa. The remains themselves present an even greater challenge. 8 individuals of comparable extraordinary size buried together with clear intention. This wasn't a single anomaly. It wasn't an isolated medical condition. It was a group, a population fragment. And their preservation suggests that whoever built the vault succeeded in their goal. The chamber held, the engineering worked, time was kept at bay. That leaves us with questions that no archive has ever answered. What happened to the 8 skeletons discovered in 1856? Why was a permanent burial vault constructed beneath land believed to be untouched prairie? Who possessed the knowledge to build it, and why has no trace of them remained above ground? These aren't rhetorical questions, they are gaps in the historical record. Gaps that have been filled not with evidence, but with dismissal. If the Iowa discovery was genuine, then it forces a reconsideration of long-held assumptions. It suggests that North America may have hosted populations we no longer acknowledge, that some cultures built in stone, understood engineering, and buried their dead with permanence, that parts of the past were overwritten, plowed under, or built over before they could be studied. For a brief moment in 1856, the earth beneath Iowa opened just enough to reveal something out of place. 8 enormous skeletons preserved inside a vault that shouldn't have existed, built by hands we can no longer identify. And instead of examining it, the site was covered again. Construction continued. Time passed. The Iowa giants weren't just a strange frontier story. They were a glimpse, a narrow, accidental glimpse into a version of history that didn't survive institutional filtering. And once you see that glimpse, it becomes impossible to ignore the larger question it raises. If this was buried beneath one building site, what else lies beneath the farmlands of America? What other vaults? What other chambers? What other evidence was quietly erased before cameras, before modern archaeology, before anyone was prepared to ask the wrong questions? Because if Iowa was once home to something we no longer recognize, then the real mystery isn't what was found in 1856, it's what else was found and never mentioned again.